Meet Africa's best and brightest minds. On the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, the fight over electoral districts. And Facebook's CEO makes a big announcement and starts a conversation about a prospective parent's most painful experience. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Lenore Moudou. This is Africa 54. We'll have those stories in a moment, but first, we have a developing story out of North Africa. According to media reports, a boat jammed with some 600 migrants has capsized in the Mediterranean Sea off the coast of Libya. Officials and aid agencies say many people are feared to be dead. In a tweet, the UN Refugee Agency says that about 250 people have been rescued and 16 bodies recovered so far. More than 2,000 migrants and refugees have died so far this year in attempts to reach Europe by boat. For the latest details on this story, visit voanews.com. This week on Africa 54, we are highlighting U.S. President Barack Obama's Mandela Washington Fellows Program. The initiative empowers 500 young Africans through academic coursework, leadership training, and networking. Joining us now with more on the Mandela Fellows is Africa 54's Esther Gitui Yuwot.
Thanks, Leno. 1 year after participating in President Barack Obama's Young African Leadership Initiative, now called the Mandela Washington Fellowship in Washington, 28-year-old Ndeye Absa-Nying is back in Senegal, her home country, and thriving. VOA's Mariama Diallo visited her recently and reports on how the leadership initiative has benefited her.
Ndeye Absa-Nying was the software group marketing leader for North and West Africa for computer giant IBM, but has since been promoted.
I'm the software cloud portfolio manager for Middle East Africa and Turkey.
And her fashion brand of clothing, ABC or Aduna Boule Comprendre, is flourishing.
I'm still handling ABC, which is my brand, more than 26,000 fans on Facebook and growing.
In the capital city, Dakar, Nying says she used to be called a bulldog with lipstick because her focus was all about making money. But after studying at the University of Texas in Austin and participating in YALI, everything changed. Helping out at a food bank really opened her eyes.
The way you just step back and have a look at the world and say, okay, this is a whole ecosystem where I can benefit from each other through networking and where I can help others through community services. It's just an outstanding view of how I benefited from YALI.
She's also been involved with helping women prisoners find a new life through arts and crafts. Their work is exhibited at this gallery. One would think she has her hands full. Not exactly. She describes her brand new project called Jeter.
It's an association helping on entrepreneurs to start thinking and envisioning their future, not only leaning on an employment opportunity, but really creating the path to their own, let's say, personal development.
She meets with a group of associates to brainstorm on how to make it successful.
And the idea is to really help in mentoring younger people, what we call the next generation of leaders, so that really we help in having more Yalians. Why not? Even if they don't have the chance to go and get there and meet with President Obama, they might be having the very same chance that I've got with my other fellows.
Yet another way for Ndeye Absa-Nying to give back to her community. Mariama Diallo, VOA News, in Dakar.
Thanks, Mariama. Another Mandela Washington Fellow is Hassan Rilwan, who has big plans upon returning home to Nigeria after completing his fellowship. He hopes to help his country improve employment among the youth with education and skills acquisition. Hassan is an entrepreneur, the managing director of a cleaning service, Organic Farm, and the publisher of an online magazine. He also started a foundation that focuses on education and well-being of orphans in northern Nigeria.
I'm a member of the Washington Fellows. I'm from Nigeria. I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm 18 years old.
What exactly? I'm like,
My name is Hassan Runwan. I'm the Group Managing Director of Focal Point. We have Focal Point Cleaners Limited. So Focal Point Cleaners, we're into dry cleaning. We're into cleaning. We have about 5 outlets in Nigeria. Then we have Focal Point Publishing. So Focal Point Publishing is a printing and publishing company. And we publish Sardauna magazine. Sardauna magazine is a flagship northern magazine, even though it's essentially an online magazine at the moment. So people get newsletter on a daily basis. And I'm also the acting chairman of G17 Farms. So G17 Farms, we're into integrated farming. It has a capacity of about 120,000 birds. We just took delivery of about 11,000 layers last week. Also the founder of Sardauna Media Child Destitution Eradication Foundation. So that's the foundation with which I try to help in the eradication of child destitution in northern Nigeria. So I've had the privilege of sleeping, waking on a daily basis, going to classes with 24 other excellent young African leaders. For we young African leaders, are we interested in going into government? And if we find ourselves in government, how do we intend to do something differently? What are the gaps and how do we close it? I believe we've built a kind of a brotherhood, and I believe, for Africa to take its rightful place in world politics and economy, there's a need for us to build network and synergy. And it has to be a synergy of purpose. So I think Yali has provided the platform for us to be able to achieve that. And then, of course, it's also good to do business with America. So we've been trying to talk with American companies to see how we can collaborate. I am hoping that I can get to know from you guys how my company can optimize, and for all of us, our individual companies, can optimize our businesses on Google and YouTube. As you know, Africa is the point where you have the highest growth and highest development rate in the world today. So for every serious international businessman, that person has to focus on Africa as part of his key strategy. And we can be that access.
Tomorrow on Africa 54, we'll profile 2 more Mandela Washington Fellows, so be sure to tune in. Lenore?
Thank you so much, Esther. Now joining us in the studio are 2 Mandela Washington Fellows. Fatou Ugwuche is new media consultant at the Independent National Electoral in Nigeria, where she is instrumental in project management, capacity development, and developing strategies for citizen engagement using new and traditional media. Also with us is Longanani Gombi. He is a supporter and public representative of the Democratic Alliance in South Africa. In 2014, he was elected to the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Legislature as the youngest public official ever elected to the provincial parliament at 24 years old. Thanks to the both of you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So let me start with you, Fatou. The program is coming to a close. What has been the experience like?
I've had a great experience during this Yali Fellowship. I mean, the networks I've built, the connections I've made, the institutions that I have visited that were specific to my interests, and also the other Washington Fellows that I met at Howard University who have now become family. I believe, during my 6 weeks here, I've been able to learn about, international models and best practices for public engagement, which I am only excited to go back home and apply to my work. So I can only wait to be back home and start the work that I intend to do when I get back to Nigeria.
That's great. And you, Longanani, what was it like?
Thank you very much for having us. It's been an amazing journey, and I think that in this program they've gone above and beyond to make sure that whatever field we're in, we're actually paid to people close to that industry. So, for instance, I did job shadowing at the mayor's office. I was based in Washington, D.C., where there's a lot of institutions which are relevant to me and the field in which I'm in. And I've made so many connections with people across the continent, such as Fatu, who are at the same institution as her, and other people in other countries. And I just want to travel. I want to learn about what other people are doing across the continent, looking at projects across the borders. And, I mean, people are doing amazing stuff. I got involved in politics at a young age, but some people have built up companies. You know, they're 23 years old and they're managing companies and NGOs. So it's been
definitely
awesome.
Amazing stuff you guys are doing. You ran and got elected at the age of 24. I mean, that's incredible. What prompted you to run for parliament?
Sure. You know, I think I had a good support structure within the party that, you know, I belong to and which I support. You know, and in talking to some of the fellows, I realized even some of the political actions that I did, I think started in high school, and I got involved, I think that first month I got to university, and by the time, you know, an election came, they asked me to stand, and I wasn't too sure if I could make it, but somehow I was able to compete, and they've created the right environments. Now, South Africa has got a large population of young people, so I think there was also that pressure, you know, we're responding to young people's needs. I started the student organization at Rhodes. I think we had something like 600 members, one of the biggest branches in the country. And so from there onwards, things fell into place.
And now today you're here. That's great. Now, Fatu, Nigeria went through some elections that were deemed by many as historical, free and fair. What role did you play, given that you work with the Electoral Committee? Tell us about your work and how it helped to make the process free and fair, really.
I led the team that was in charge of developing strategies for voter education using new media. And one of the most important things for us was providing information to the electorates, because we believed that information is power, it is knowledge, you know, it is key to being able to participate in the process. So we decided to develop strategies for enabling two-way communication between the Electoral Commission and Nigerians, because, you know, we decided that making sure that people were properly educated about the electoral process will increase their engagement. And it was also on us to sustain that engagement, because it was not only about providing voter education, but just making sure that the two-way communication was open between INEC and citizens. And what I realized was that people were appreciative of the efforts that we made in providing information to them. So in the events where we had challenges, you know, they were able to understand because we had been, you know, consistent in providing that information. And I believe that the education that we provided to the electorate was instrumental in improving the quality of the electoral process, because, I mean, invalid votes this year really reduced, you know, because people were better educated about what to do when they get to their polling units, you know, and how to vote, you know, and how to, you know, protect their votes and own their voice. So I believe, you know, that engagement and the education that we provided to the electorate greatly impacted the outcome of the elections.
Now, when we talk about youth engagement, it's really so broad, such a broad topic. But for you, Longanani, how do you visualize this?
So youth engagement is how best can you provide that platform for them to be involved. Now, I've taken a lot of efforts to making sure that the political party, for instance, that I'm involved in, invests a lot in being in the space around tertiary institutions, in being around colleges, because that's ultimately where they are involved. Instead of expecting them to say that, well, these young people must come and meet us, why don't we go directly to where they're on? We've taken a lot of efforts around social media and trying to be ahead of the times. So even you'll find our party leader engaging directly with people on social platforms, and such as myself. And I use it as a platform to talk to people. And wherever we're in government, our leaders, they actually use it to directly themselves speak to service delivery matters to them, and matters around opportunity and jobs.
Okay.
And yes, and ultimately at the end of it, it's about speaking to issues which speak to them. So we've got serious cases of unemployment. It's mostly affecting young people. So the issues that we speak about most are the ones that speak to young people.
Okay. Now, when we talk about the YALI program, really, it's about leadership, no matter what area of work or interest you have. What does leadership mean to you, Fatu? What makes a great leader?
I believe a great leader is somebody who embodies the principles of servant leadership. So instead of always looking for what you're going to get out of the work that you're doing, I think you should always focus on what you actually put in it, the value you're creating for whatever it is you're doing, no matter how small it is. It could be in your community, your country, whatever it is. I mean, if you're a doctor, a farmer, a mechanic, an engineer, a politician, whatever it is that you're doing. I believe if you're able to, embody that principle of servant leadership, and just lead people, that it will create a greater impact in having people that believe in the work you're doing, and also getting people to contribute to the work you're doing. Because I've also realized that as being a leader, you cannot do everything by yourself.
Absolutely.
You need the support of people that you work with, the support of the people in the community that you're providing leadership to. So I believe servant leadership is definitely one of the key factors in being a leader.
Great. And to wrap up, Longanani, I want to ask you this question. Apartheid has ended over two decades ago in your country, but it's an era that you haven't lived directly, but you are able to know about it. From people like Nelson Mandela, who were leaders and then passed away, what can you tell us in terms of the climate today in South Africa for the youth, and just in general, how do you feel?
Well, we still feel the pains of apartheid. I mean, it's very, very vivid. We see inequality, we see still some problems along racial lines, although we've made a lot of efforts. And, we call it the Rainbow Nation. It's what we strive for. It's what we work every single day to get to. We've still got a long way to go. We still feel that at times there's some missed opportunities, but we're in a process of constantly correcting ourselves. The political framework is there. People are changing parties. Governments at times are changing in places. Leaders are being held far more to account, and we're using state institutions to try to be able. We're working on trying to strengthen them. So making sure that leaders act in the interests of people, and ultimately it gets better. Slowly but surely, it will get better.
Thank you, Longanani and Fatu. We'll be keeping an eye on the both of you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
And that was Fatu. And that was Fatu Oguchwe and Longanani Gumbi. They are 2015 Yali Mandela Washington Fellows. Now, here's the latest on a story that has sparked international outrage. A Zimbabwean court on Wednesday postponed the September 28th trial of a local hunter accused of failing to stop American dentist Walter Palmer from illegally killing the country's most prized lion last month. Theo Bronkhorst was arrested last week and charged with breaching hunting rules when he helped Palmer lure Cecil, a rare black-maned lion, out of Wangwe National Park to be killed with a bow and arrow. Bronkhorst has yet to plead in court, but has publicly denied any wrongdoing. If convicted, Bronkhorst faces a fine of $20,000 and up to 10 years in jail. Cameroon says it has arrested suspected Boko Haram fighters posing as refugees in order to attack a refugee camp on its northern border with Nigeria. The arrests were made after yesterday's suspected Boko Haram attack on 2 Cameroonian villages, in which at least 9 people were killed, dozens of children kidnapped, and houses burned. Now, Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari has named a new chief of the state oil firm. Emmanuel Ibe Kachikwu was tapped as the new managing director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation as part of an overall aimed at rooting out corruption and mismanagement. Buhari, who was elected in March, has made clear his desire to clean up the oil sector, which provides the government with about 70% of its revenue. He dissolved the Petroleum Corporation Board in June as a first step. Now, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, the partisan fights over U.S. voting district boundaries. Stay with us.
This is Green Beat for a healthier planet.
United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon recently visited Norway in an attempt to raise awareness of the upcoming climate change conference.
This looks magnificent, but at the same time, I'm alarmed that there are so many cracks it may soon break. They are melting very rapidly.
The United States, European Union, and China announced their proposed carbon pledges for the conference. But Samantha Smith of the World Wildlife Fund says via Skype, the pledges don't go far enough.
There's already a big gap between what's needed to really fight climate change and what many countries and industries are doing today. We do need to see more urgency, more political will, not necessarily just from the United Nations, but actually from the countries that are doing the negotiations.
Member nations will meet in Paris later this year to try to sign off on a new international carbon-cutting agreement. For VOA's Green Beat, I'm Rebecca Ward.
Today, in our third installment of our special VOA series, The Freedom to Vote, correspondent Chris Simpkins reports on the current political debate over the practice of intentionally creating voting jurisdictions or districts that favor a candidate or one political party over another.
These Latino voters have many milestones to celebrate, including their growing political influence in Texas. But Austin City Councilman Sabino Renteria remembers when Latinos across the state faced discriminatory voting practices 50 years ago.
Back then, you had to pay poll taxes to vote. And I remember going with my dad and voting for John F. Kennedy, and paying his $2.50. From then on, I always felt like, that was a right and we shouldn't have to pay for it.
5 decades later, the political landscape has changed. Renteria is among 3 Latinos serving on the Austin City Council. He was elected after the city did away with an at-large system that elected council members citywide.
Political observers say Austin's old election system made it difficult for Latinos to win a seat on the city council because they couldn't generate enough support from white voters in the rest of the city.
Now Austin voters fill the council seats from within districts that often separate wealthy white and low-income minority neighborhoods.
We won, and I was the first elected from my district.
Texans are used to voting jurisdictions whose boundaries twist and turn like the river flowing through downtown San Antonio. For decades, American lawmakers of both parties have drawn boundaries to gain partisan advantage in a practice known as gerrymandering.
We were going through the typical fighting over the maps that we see here.
Jim Henson, a political analyst at the University of Texas at Austin, says the history of one-party rule in Texas created bitter political fights over the distribution of voters.
For decades, the Democrats dominated that process, and you had Republicans feeling perpetually bullied in the redistricting process.
But now the tables have turned. There are several legal challenges to a redistricting plan adopted by the Republican-controlled legislature in 2011. The courts are trying to determine if the maps violated provisions of the Voting Rights Act designed to ensure minority representation. Texas Republican state lawmaker Larry Gonzalez defends a plan that's being challenged.
I think it's a wonderful thing when you can say that your racial minorities are diversified enough, they can be represented in every single part of Williamson County, that we could draw the lines, still meet the requirements of the Voting Rights Act.
Hey, Linda.
But Democratic Councilman Renteria says voters deserve to have nonpartisan citizen committees drawing political jurisdictions, not Republican lawmakers trying to obtain a partisan advantage.
They're going to probably draw their lines so that they will stay in power for the next 20 years or 30 years.
More state legislatures are looking at proposals of taking redistricting out of the hands of politicians. But not here in Texas, where state lawmakers seem determined to continue the practice of gerrymandering.
Have all members voted?
Chris Simpkins, VOA News, Austin, Texas.
It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Facebook's CEO and his wife are adding to their social network. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Benin, President Yaya Buni pledges 800 troops to a regional force intended to fight Boko Haram. In Gabon, hundreds demonstrate outside the French embassy to protest after the president's chief of staff was briefly detained in Paris on suspicion of corruption. In Nigeria, U.S. Congresswomen Sheila Jackson-Lee and Frederica Wilson visit organizers of the Bring Back Our Girls campaign. Finally, in Zimbabwe, the killing of Cecil the lion exposes finances of the Wildlife Conservation Authority, as figures show that hunting generates about $40 million annually. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back. I'm Esther Gido-Ewart. Here's what's trending. Online outrage over the killing of Cecil the lion pushing U.S. airlines into action. American Airlines joined United and Delta in banning the transport of game hunting trophies. The ban covers the big five animals known as the hardest to kill on foot: lions, leopards, elephants, rhinos, and buffaloes. Public pressure on the airlines grew when a Delta customer started a petition on change.org calling on the airline to stop shipping wildlife trophies. Nearly 400,000 people signed it. Cecil's killing by an American dentist last month sparked an international outcry. Next up, big news for Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Dr. Priscilla Chan, the co-founder of the world's largest social network, used a Facebook post to announce that Chan is pregnant with a baby girl. He didn't say when the baby is due. Zuckerberg also said they had suffered 3 miscarriages over the last 2 years. He acknowledged in his post that many people are reluctant to speak publicly about miscarriages, but added that he and Chan decided to share their information after hearing from friends who had similar experiences and ultimately were able to have children. The couple, who married in 2012, hopes to encourage other parents who may be struggling with difficult pregnancies. And finally, One Direction may be zenless, but they still have their groove. The band's new single, Drag Me Down, topped the charts in 30 countries only 3 hours after its debut. It was an impromptu release with no fanfare or press promotion, with the band dropping the song on iTunes and Spotify before premiering it on radio and online. The single is being promoted by record company Sicko Music as offering a more mature sound for the band. Their 5th album is scheduled for release this November. And that is what is trending today, Eleanor.
Thank you, Esther. That's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 300 and 600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and good night from Washington.
Music is something that brings people together.
Music educates, it motivates, it's a bridge.
Music. Ali.
On
VOA.
I am Sheikh Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent.